The committee has recorded a tie vote on Ms. Clark's nomination to be U.S. District Judge for the Southern District of New York pursuant to Section 3, subsection 1A of Senate Resolution 27 of the 117th Congress. I will transmit to the Secretary of the Senate a notice of this tie vote. Under Section 3, subsection 1B of that resolution, either the majority or minority leader may then make a motion to discharge the nomination. Next is Hector Gonzalez, nominated to the Eastern District of New York. Does anyone seek recognition? If not, on favorably reporting the nomination of Hector Gonzalez to be U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of New York, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
I go proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No.
Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Tillis.
I by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 13 yeas, 9 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The last of the judicial nominees up for vote today is Judge Fred Slaughter, nominated to the Central District of California. Does anyone seek recognition related to this nominee? If not, on favorably reporting the nomination of Fred Slaughter to be U.S. District Judge for the Central District of California, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
I by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
I by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 15 yeas, 7 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. We're also voting on 2 U.S. attorneys and 2 U.S. marshals. The U.S. attorneys are Marissa Darden, Northern District of Ohio, Delia Smith for the District of Virgin Islands. 2 U.S. marshals are Eddie Frizzell for the District of Minnesota and LaDon Reynolds for the Northern District of Illinois. I'll just say a word about Chief Reynolds. He's been Chief of Police in Oak Park, Illinois since 2019. He served with the Oak Park Police Department since 1994. Well respected in his field of law enforcement, and I think he will do an admirable job. I might note that this U.S. Marshal's position in the Northern District of Illinois has been vacant since May 2018. We are facing serious problems with gun violence and crime in the Northern District of Illinois, and we need all hands on deck. A man of Chief Reynolds' experience is long overdue, and I hope we'll do everything we can to bring him to vote soon. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on any of these nominees? Senator Cotton.
Mr. Chairman, I want to address these nominees since I'm the reason they were held over from last week. And I'll continue to hold over all department nominees, and I'll continue to insist on regular order in the floor until the Department of Justice stands up for the men and women of law enforcement. In the summer of 2020, left-wing street militias attacked the Portland courthouse for weeks on end. U.S. Marshals defended that courthouse. They had to confront fireworks being shot at them, ball bearings being thrown at them, lasers being shot at their eyes, attempts to seal them in the courthouse and burn it to the ground. Now, left-wing activists are suing the deputy marshals who spent months on the front lines defending the courthouse. And the Department of Justice confirmed to me last night in a letter that they are not currently representing 4 of the U.S. Marshals who defended that. They gave no reason whatsoever. They've given no reason to those 4 deputy marshals either. Now, you may say that, well, they're under investigation or they did something wrong. But all 4 of those deputy U.S. Marshals are currently on unrestricted active duty. That means we trust them to guard our courthouses and our judges, to go out in society and try to capture fugitives, to protect witnesses in the Witness Protection Program, to guard dignitaries. Yet the Department of Justice refuses to pay for their legal fees or to provide them counsel in civil lawsuits against them for actions taken in the line of duty. I'd also point out this is happening right as we learn that the Department of Justice sought a greatly reduced sentence for Montez Lee, a career criminal who committed arson in the BLM riots in Minneapolis that resulted in the death of a father of 5. The sentencing guidelines called for a 20-year sentence. The Department of Justice sought barely half of that, and in their sentencing document, they cited the fact that he was engaged in a social protest, giving voice to the voiceless, a man who burned alive a father of 5. At a time that they are hanging out to dry GS-11 and GS-13 police, exposing them to financial ruin and bankruptcy because they defended federal property in Portland. We all warned when the president nominated Vanita Gupta, and this Senate confirmed her, that the department would wage a war on the police, and that's exactly what they're doing right now. So until the department agrees to represent these 4 U.S. Marshals, or they give a satisfactory answer for why they are not, then I will not allow any nominee to be fast-tracked through this committee or on the floor.
I'd like to address that for a moment. I don't know much about this case that you noted. The death of Oscar Stewart was certainly tragic, and Montez Lee was appropriately prosecuted for the arson that led to his death. But before I discuss any circumstances of this case, let me be clear. The U.S. Attorney nominee, Andre Lugar, had nothing to do with this. And yet he is the one who's being asked to pay a price, not just him, but the people who would be represented by his good offices. At a time when we're all giving speeches about law enforcement and our respect for police and law enforcement, you're showing your respect for law enforcement by telling me in the Northern District of Illinois I have to wait on the appointment of U.S. Marshal. This is a professional lawman who has been given this position. No one has questioned his qualifications. You are not just punishing him, but you're really striking out at a situation in my state that desperately needs attention, and that is law enforcement to stop the gun violence and death. How can this be in honor of U.S. Marshals when you're holding up a U.S. Marshal?
Mr. Chairman, I'd point out that, as you said, this office has been vacant for almost 3 years, since April 2018. So if it was such an urgent priority, you could have gone to Donald Trump in the summer of 2018 and asked him to appoint a U.S. Marshal.
Of course, President Trump just waited for my recommendations. I will tell you that they didn't consider it a priority, and that's a mistake that's not being made by this president. If you're going to make a speech about the violent crime and the death statistics that we're seeing across the United States, you cannot make that speech and hold up the U.S. Marshal that I need in the Northern District of Illinois to execute the duties of that office. It's long overdue. Don't punish my people I represent who are looking for law enforcement at the highest professional level by denying them a U.S. Marshal one day because of your concern about some other case in another state. That is not fair to my state, and it's not fair to this committee.
The people being punished are 4 career law enforcement officers, GS-11s and GS-13s who've been hung out to dry by this department.
Well,
why are they not being provided representation, as is the department's custom and practice?
Plead your case, but don't take it out on innocent people. Don't take it out on law enforcement.
People who are innocent here are police who are facing the threat of financial
And so
ruin.
you are holding up a U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois, my law enforcement official that I need to protest the treatment of law enforcement officials in other states? How can that possibly be fair?
Okay, Senator Durbin.
Senator Klobuchar.
I've been discussing this with Senator Cott, and I will continue to do that. And I just want to make the case for these 2 nominees in Minnesota. Number 1, Andy Lugar, who you just mentioned, Mr. Chair, was not in the office when this decision was made on the sentencing case, but he was in the office previously and has a respect of law enforcement across our state. He earned the respect of law enforcement, took on sex traffickers, major white-collar offenders. He led a team of prosecutors, local police, and federal investigators to put Jacob Wetterling's, one of the most notorious missing children cases in our country, to put his killer behind bars, a case that had eluded law enforcement for decades. And in fact, Mr. Chair, when President Trump came into office, I had extensive discussions with his counsel, Don McGahn. And I know that Andy Lugar, when they had terminated the U.S. attorneys across the country, was one of only a few that they actually wanted to rehire. And these are direct discussions with me and Mr. McGahn because of Andy Lugar's great respect. Andy Lugar ended up not retaining that job, but now he is willing to come back. And he has been waiting and had to stop his activities with his law firm because after he got through this committee, he was ready to go back and manage the office. And he believes that office needs managing and wants to get into the office. And so holding him up serves no purpose at all when it comes to issues that were raised in Minnesota. The second one is the one we're considering today, Eddie Frizzell, 30 years of experience in law enforcement, chief of police for Metro Transit in the Twin Cities, and also a 30-year veteran of the Minnesota Army National Guard, including 2 overseas deployments, one to Bosnia and another to Kuwait and Iraq. These are the 2 men that are being held up in Minnesota at a time where we need leadership in place in our state. So I am hopeful we can work this out and we can put these 2 candidates, both of whom are outstanding, into these positions.
Mr. Chairman, just 20 seconds, if I may.
Senator Booker?
I know, and I talked to Senator Cotton on the floor yesterday. I'm going to do everything I can to help. I just want to continue to state this because it's important to me, and maybe it's personal because Benita Gupta is a friend. But I just want to remind the committee for the record that while some people had disagreed with her nomination, she had wide law enforcement support and continues. I just met with 2 law enforcement leaders, one of which represents, their union represents, the majority of police officers of the United States of America, and they continue to believe in her and support her, and I know she is pro-law enforcement. I will work with Senator Cotton to try to get an understanding of what the situation is, but I just feel the need to continue to remind people that there were definitely objections to her nomination, but she had a tremendous bedrock of support from law enforcement agencies, organizations, and unions, and still maintains that support.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy?
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest that at our next meeting you invite one of the senior officials from the Department of Justice to come before this committee to explain why the Department of Justice is not defending our U.S. Marshals?
Senator, of course I want that question answered. Asking for a hearing before the committee at this point may be premature. There has been a response, I believe. I think Senator...
Well, we know if we send a letter to the Department of Justice, we don't get responses, at least
No, I
Senator
think he
Grassley
did. I
doesn't.
think he's already received it.
So I'll say I did get a response. After 10 days, as Senator Grassley said, it was mostly just a bunch of legal gobbledygook. It gave no answer on the merits about why 1 U.S. Marshal has already had his representation denied outright, while 3 are still being strung along. I can say that all the parties involved here have heard about the one is that it's not in the interest of the United States to provide representation. Let me say that I'm not going to take that as a satisfactory answer coming from Benita Gupta's civil division.
Well,
And I'll say secondarily, the 3 who have been strung along, I mean, these incidents happened almost 2 years ago. It took Merrick Garland's Department of Justice barely 3 months to find that the officer who shot Ashley Babbitt on January 6th committed no wrongdoing. Why has it taken them almost 2 years to reach a conclusion in these marshals cases after those marshals stood on the front lines were assaulted with lasers and ball bearings and fireworks and attacks by left-wing street militias?
Well, if I could finish, Mr. Chairman, and I don't mean to suggest that Senator Cotton shouldn't have jumped in because I appreciate that answer, but a letter's one thing. Judging the credibility of live testimony is quite another. I would like to reassert my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, that at our next meeting, this is an urgent matter, that we invite a senior representative to the Department of Justice to come explain to us shouldn't take long, why it is declined to represent our U.S. Marshals.
I'd like to quote from the letter that was sent to Senator Cotton. I'm looking for the date on that letter. I think it's been within the last week or two. I don't see a date on the letter.
It was yesterday.
Senator received a response yesterday. Let me read from it so that we understand what we're talking about here. The Department of Justice strongly supports the provision of representation for federal officers acting in the line of duty. The department has received numerous representation requests in connection with official law enforcement conduct relating to the Portland protest. We are providing direct representation or paying for private counsel for over 70 federal employees in response to these requests. To date, we have denied only a single request for representation arising from these events, and 3 requests remain under review. Now, that is not gobbledygook. That is a series of declarative sentences that I think make it clear. 3 cases are being evaluated. 1 they have denied. And for that, we're going to hold up the U.S. Marshal for the Northern
Yeah, we are. We're going
District
to hold up every department nominee.
Well, I
actually.
can
Yeah, we
ju-
are.
I can just
Because I
tell
don't
you,
care. I'm
don't
glad
give
they're
it-
representing the 70. I care about the 4.
Don't give a speech about law enforcement in Northern District and any violent crime if you're holding up the law enforcement officials that are going to be given the responsibility of taking care of that issue. I could share your concerns about wanting to know what they're going to do with the 3 and why the 1 was denied. That is a legitimate concern. But to take it out on law enforcement in Illinois, for goodness sakes, or other states, Minnesota, does that show respect for law enforcement?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Kennedy.
not to put too fine a point on it, but may I suggest that we invite the author of that letter to come to our next Judiciary Committee meeting and explain this situation?
The author is Peter Hyen, Acting Assistant Attorney General. I do not know him. I think it is appropriate to ask that he or someone he represents come before us. I don't think it has to be a formal committee meeting. Let's find out where we stand on the 4 that Senator Cotton has a question on.
Well, I would, look, you're the chairman. You can decline my request, but this concerns me, and I just found out that one of those U.S. Marshals may be in Louisiana, and I think it would behoove all of us to hear together so we could all ask questions from the gentleman whose name I've already forgotten, but
Mr. Hyen.
Mr. Hine. Justice is right across the street. Just ask him to come on over and let's hear directly.
So I would say that Peter Hine is not the right person here. He's merely the acting assistant attorney general for legislative affairs. He's just transmitting a substantive decision that's been made, presumably by Vanita Gupta as the associate attorney general, since he oversees the civil division, which represents law enforcement officers for lawsuits in the line of duty. Again, these officers have been hung out to dry. They have no reason. The one who's been denied has been given no factual reason why he was denied representation,
Well, could we
merely that
ask-
it was in the interest of the United States.
Who asked Ms.
I'm
not
I'd
wedded.
love to ask her.
I don't know who the appropriate person is. So let me amend my suggestion to bring the appropriate person to our next Judiciary Committee meeting to answer these questions.
I'm going to pursue this matter. We don't know the circumstances. We don't know if we're dealing with privacy issues, attorney-client privilege issues. We just don't know. We have 1 who's been denied. Maybe we can learn that, the facts behind that. Maybe we can't. You know, as an attorney, there are certain things that just can't, maybe wouldn't be disclosed to the public related to personnel matters and the like. So I don't want to have an open hearing, people under oath, until we've at least taken another step of asking for follow-up on this letter. 3 are under review. Perhaps they'll be decided soon.
And I understand, Mr. Chairman. May I suggest that you attempt to get that answer from the Department of Justice, and if they don't answer within 10 days, I would reassert my suggestion that we ask Ms. Gupta to come on over and tell us what's going on.
I don't know if she's the appropriate person.
Or the appropriate person.
And I would say we don't know the circumstances. These 4 marshals don't know the circumstances either. Here's what we do know. All 4 of them, all 4 are on unrestricted active duty with the Marshal Service. Now, there are cases in which the Department of Justice can legitimately decline representation if a law enforcement officer committed a serious felony in violation of clearly established law at the time that may be appropriate. But how could they possibly be denying representation to these 4 marshals and then sending them back out on unrestricted active duty?
Well, all I'm suggesting, Tom, is that this matter can be cleared up pretty quickly. I'm willing to start the meeting at 8 o'clock, whatever time you want to start it. Let's bring the appropriate person over from the Department of Justice and respectfully ask them what's going on here. Why aren't you representing these marshals? And if they say attorney-client privilege, whatever, we'll learn something.
I might also add that that letter made it clear that they would represent them for acting in the line of duty, which may be the issue. I don't know, but I will pursue it to get clarification from this letter, and we'll decide after that effort is made whether there's anything more that needs to be made. But I think that's the first reasonable request, is that they give us more information than contained in the letter that was received yesterday.
I would just ask, Mr. Chairman, that we don't allow them to rope-a-dope us. They give us an answer, and if they don't give us an answer, we think about bringing them over.
I respect that, and I'm willing to live by that standard. But to think that innocent individuals are having their appointments held up in this committee to execute the responsibility of law enforcement at a time of high crime in my state is an unacceptable pressure point. I just think it doesn't make sense. It's inconsistent to argue how much we revere law enforcement by holding up law enforcement officials that this administration wants to appoint. The question now is on the U.S. Attorney nominees and marshals before us. I understand we are going to proceed with an en bloc voice vote on the 2 U.S. Attorney nominees receiving a vote today, and separate en bloc voice vote on the 2 U.S. Marshal nominees. So on favorably reporting the nominations of Marissa Darden and Delia Smith to be U.S. Attorneys, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nominations will be favorably reported to the floor. Next on favorably...
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Senator Hawley recorded as no.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blackburn.
Record me as no.
Recorded as no. Senator Lee, no as to Marissa Darden. Any others? Senator Cruz, no for both, or which? Both. Senator Cruz is no on both. Chair repeats, the majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nominations will be favorably reported to the floor. Next, on favorably reporting the nominations of Eddie Frizzell and LaDon Reynolds to be U.S. Marshals. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. Are there any members wishing to be recorded no on those U.S. Marshals?
Lee.
Senator Lee? No on Frizzell. Senator Blackburn?
No.
On both? On both, Senator? Senator Blackburn, no on both. Any others?
Senator Cruz.
Cruz? No on both. Chair restates, the majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nominations will be favorably reported to the floor. The final nomination is Andrew Foyce, nominated to be chairman of the Administrative Conference of the U.S., currently serves as Career Attorney Advisor in the Office of Legislative Affairs at the Administrative Office. Before that, spent several years as a Deputy Attorney General. Does anyone seek recognition on the Foyce nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Andrew Foyce to be Chairman of the Administrative Conference of the United States, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein. Aye. Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar.
Aye.
Mr. Coons.
Yeah, I
Mr.
can't
Blumenthal.
Lugar was
Mr.
more
Rono.
understandable. There were a few other people. Remember the letter and they all.
Mr. Rono. Mr. Booker.
And then Menendez.
Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
This seems like I just
Mr.
explained
Graham.
about the guy. And he left Durbin's guy.
Mr. Cornyn.
Yeah,
Mr. Lee.
the other ones did both.
Mr. Cruz.
And they're just doing to stand with Cotton.
Mr. Sachs.
His was all out of salt.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
Was the Google
Mr.
bill?
Kennedy. Mr. Phillips. Mrs. Blackburn.